Every time you pull up to a cheap gas bar in Canada and slide your card, there is a quiet war happening inside your fuel tank that you cannot see, cannot hear, and will not feel until your mechanic hands you a repair bill that makes your eyes water. The fuel sitting in that underground tank right now may be legally sellable, may meet the minimum government standard, and may still be slowly coating your intake valves with a layer of carbon deposits that will cost you $800 to $1,200 to clean. Nobody at the pump is going to tell you that. Hi, my name is Alexander, and this is Broken Canada, the fuel quality lie nobody talks about. Here is what the fuel industry does not want you thinking about while you are standing in the cold at 6:45 in the morning, trying to remember your PIN number. And yes, I know you have had that same PIN since 2009. We all have. Not all gasoline is the same. I know that sounds obvious. You already know premium costs more than regular. You already know ethanol is a thing. But the gap I'm talking about has nothing to do with octane rating and everything to do with detergent additives, and the Canadian government has done almost nothing to protect you from it. Here is how it works. Every gasoline retailer in Canada must meet a minimum fuel quality standard. That minimum is set by the Canadian General Standards Board, and it is exactly what it sounds like: a minimum, a floor. The lowest acceptable bar before the product is technically considered fuel and not something you use to strip paint off a deck. They set the bar low enough that almost nobody trips over it, and then they walked away. Above that floor, there is a voluntary certification program called Top Tier. It was developed by a coalition of automakers including General Motors, Toyota, BMW, Honda, Volkswagen, and others, because those manufacturers looked at the minimum government standard and said, out loud, in an actual press release, that it was not sufficient to keep their engines clean. They did not whisper it internally. They published it. They created an entirely separate certification program because the legal minimum was already destroying the engines they were spending billions of dollars to engineer. Let that sit for a second. The people who built your engine looked at what is legally allowed in Canadian fuel and said, that is not good enough for our machines. And then Canada shrugged and kept the standard anyway. Top tier certification requires a significantly higher concentration of detergent additives than the government minimum. These additives do one job. They prevent carbon deposits from forming on your fuel injectors and intake valves. Without them, every tank full of gas is leaving a little more residue behind. Not a lot, just a little. Every fill up, every single time. For 5 years. Until your mechanic hands you an estimate and your vision goes slightly blurry. And most Canadians have no idea this standard exists, let alone whether the station they have been loyal to for a decade actually meets it. How the modern engine made bad fuel more dangerous. Here's where it gets worse, and I need you to pay attention to this part because it is the mechanical reason that cheap fuel in 2024 is not the same risk as cheap fuel in 1994. Starting around 2012 and accelerating through 2018, the majority of new vehicles sold in Canada switched to gasoline direct injection engines, GDI. You have probably seen it marketed under different names: EcoBoost, SkyActiv, TFSI, TSI. They all use the same basic architecture. Fuel is sprayed directly into the combustion chamber rather than into the intake port upstream of the valve. On paper, this is brilliant engineering. Better fuel atomization, higher compression, more power from a smaller displacement, better fuel economy numbers on the sticker. Here's the problem. In the old port injection system, fuel washed over the intake valves on every cycle. That constant fuel bath kept the valves clean, and carbon had nowhere to accumulate. A 2002 Civic with 200,000 kilometers on it would have intake valves that looked almost new because the fuel itself was doing the cleaning. In a direct injection engine, nothing touches the intake valve. The fuel goes straight to the chamber. The valve sits in a stream of hot, recirculated exhaust gases, collecting carbon deposits with every combustion cycle, and nothing is washing it off. Now, layer bad fuel on top of that. Fuel with low detergent levels that is already leaving more residue than it should. Fuel from a tank that has been sitting in an aging underground storage system. Fuel that has been blended to the government minimum standard and sold at a station where nobody running the operation has ever heard of top-tier certification. By 40,000 to 60,000 kilometers, your intake valves look like the inside of a chimney. Your engine is misfiring at light throttle. You are using more fuel than the window sticker promised. And you are going to pay between $800 and $1,200 for a walnut blasting service that the manufacturer knew you would eventually need and chose not to mention at the dealership. This is not bad luck. This is the predictable consequence of buying fuel from the wrong places for 5 years. The 11 gas stations to avoid in Canada. Let's name names. Number 11, Fast Gas. Fast Gas operates primarily across Western Canada and the Prairie provinces. The brand is independently operated at the franchise level, which means fuel quality depends entirely on who owns that location and how seriously they follow their supply agreements. There is no consistent detergent additive standard enforced across the network. FAS Gas is not top-tier certified. In a franchise model with no quality floor above the government minimum, you are gambling every time you fill up, and the house sets the odds. Number 10. Pioneer has a presence in Ontario and parts of Atlantic Canada. Same problem as Fast Gas, multiplied by age. Many Pioneer locations are running on aging infrastructure. Underground storage tanks degrade over decades. Older tanks introduce a contamination risk, water intrusion, and sediment that the filter in your fuel system was not designed to handle long-term. Pioneer is not top-tier certified and has no publicized detergent additive standard. Pass. Number 9. Wilson Fuels. Wilson operates primarily in Atlantic Canada and positions itself as a bulk fuel and commercial supplier that also does retail. The commercial bulk supply model is not inherently bad. The problem is that retail fuel quality at Wilson locations is not held to any publicly verifiable standard above the legal minimum. When a supplier's primary customer is a construction fleet and the gas bar is a secondary revenue stream, your engine is not the priority. It never was. Number 8, Ulco. Ulco operates a network of independently branded stations, mostly in Quebec and Ontario. Here's the thing about Ulco that nobody explains at the pump. Ulco is a fuel distributor that supplies independent stations under multiple brand names. That means the Ulco-supplied station on one corner and the unbranded independent down the street may be drawing from the same supply. And that supply is not top tier. There is no published additive package. Moving on. Number 7. McEwen Petroleum. McEwen supplies fuel and operates retail locations in Ontario. McEwen is a legitimate regional player, and I want to be fair here. They are not a scam operation. What they are is a minimum standard fuel retailer with no top-tier certification and no public commitment to enhanced detergent additive levels. For a 2005 pickup truck with a port injection V8, McEwen is probably fine. For anything with a GDI engine built after 2012, you are slowly sandpapering your intake valves one fill-up at a time. No thank you. Number 6. Mohawk. Mohawk stations are co-branded with various independents across Ontario and the Prairies. The brand carries a certain Canadian nostalgia. Your dad probably filled up at Mohawk. Here is the problem. Your dad drove a 1989 Tempo with a port injection 4-cylinder that was basically indestructible. You drive a 2021 Escape with a turbocharged direct injection engine and an appetite for clean fuel that Mohawk is not equipped to feed. Not top tier, not recommended. Number 5, Ultramar in specific regions. I want to be precise here because Ultramar is a complicated case. Ultramar operates within Valero's supply chain, and fuel quality varies significantly by region. In Quebec and Atlantic Canada, where Ultramar has a denser network and more controlled supply, the product is more consistent. In markets where Ultramar is sourcing from third-party terminals, consistency drops. Ultramar is not universally top-tier certified across Canada. If Ultramar is your only option in a region, it is acceptable to use. If you have a choice, exercise it and pick a top-tier station instead. Number 4. Canadian Tire gas bars. I know, you love Canadian Tire. Everybody loves Canadian Tire. The triangle money, the little catalogs your grandmother saved in a kitchen drawer. The inexplicable joy of walking in for motor oil and leaving with a barbecue and a kayak. I get it, but the gas bar is a different story. Canadian Tire fuel bars are not top-tier certified. They are a margin play attached to a retail brand. The fuel meets the legal minimum. Your engine deserves more than the legal minimum, especially if you just spent $35,000 on it. Number 3. Shell, regular grade specifically. This one surprises people because Shell V-Power is on the recommended list later in this video. Here's the distinction. Shell V-Power Premium Grade contains a genuinely elevated additive package that earns its place on the good list. Shell Regular Grade is a different product with a different additive concentration. Shell Regular in Canada does not consistently meet top-tier standards at all locations. If you drive a naturally aspirated economy car, and you mostly use regular while rotating through Shell locations, you are probably fine over time. If you have a direct injection engine and you are buying regular at Shell because it is a familiar name, you are making an expensive assumption. Number 2. Esso at specific independent locations. Esso as a brand under Imperial Oil is largely top-tier certified. But this requires context. Not every location displaying the Esso brand is sourcing from Imperial Oil terminals with the full certified additive package. Some independently operated Esso branded stations in rural markets and smaller communities are purchasing through third-party supply agreements that do not include the full certified detergent package. The sign may say Esso, but the fuel can be different. In major urban centers, Esso is generally reliable. At a rural franchise location 3 hours from the nearest city, verify before you fill. Number 1. Unbranded independents. This is not a single brand. It is a category, and it is the most dangerous one. Across Canada, there are thousands of independent gas stations operating under no recognizable brand at all. No supply agreement, no additive standard, no accountability beyond the government minimum. These stations buy fuel on the spot market, the cheapest available at the time of purchase, from whatever terminal will sell it. Sometimes that fuel has been sitting in secondary storage longer than it should. Sometimes the ethanol blend is inconsistent. Sometimes the additive package is whatever the supplier threw in that week. Your engine cannot tell the difference at the pump. It will tell you 6 years from now. The 5 gas stations that actually protect your engine. Number 5. Husky and Co-op. Particularly strong in Western Canada, Husky locations operating under the Cenovus supply chain carry top-tier certified fuel at participating stations. Co-op gas bars across the prairies are similarly positioned. Both brands operate under a cooperative regional accountability structure, which means they are not optimizing purely for margin like a national conglomerate would. Check the top-tier website for your specific location. In Western Canada, Husky and Co-op are consistently the most reliable regional options. Number 4. Mobil. Mobil operates a relatively limited retail network in Canada compared to the United States, but where it exists, it delivers. Mobil's Synergy Fuel additive package is top-tier certified, and Mobil has maintained that certification consistently. If you are near a Mobil location, this is a station where the additive package was designed by engineers who cared about what happened inside your engine, not just what happened at the quarterly earnings call. Number 3, Petro-Canada. Petro-Canada is the most accessible top-tier certified option for most Canadians. The network is extensive, from British Columbia to Newfoundland, and the supply chain is controlled and consistent. Suncor, which owns Petro-Canada, runs a vertically integrated fuel operation that maintains additive concentration from refinery to pump. This is not marketing. This is engineering discipline applied at the distribution level. For everyday driving, for GDI engines, for anyone who wants to fill up without thinking too hard about it, Petro-Canada is the default correct answer for most of this country. Number 2, Shell V-Power, the premium grade only, and I want to be precise about why. Shell's V-Power formulation in Canada contains a nitrogen-enriched cleaning compound that actively removes existing deposits, not just prevents new ones. This matters. If you have been filling up at a non-top tier station for the last 3 years, your intake valves already have deposits forming. A rotation of Shell V-Power will not replace a walnut blasting service if the buildup is significant, but it will slow the accumulation and, in early stages, reverse it. This is one of the few retail fuel products where the marketing claim about cleaning actually has a chemistry behind it. Number 1. Esso at certified top-tier locations. When Esso is operating through a terminal supplied by Imperial Oil with the full certified additive package, it is the best combination of network coverage and verified fuel quality available in Canada. Imperial Oil has been top-tier certified since the program launched. The additive package called Esso Synergy has documented testing behind it. The key, as I mentioned in the avoid list, is to confirm your specific location is an Imperial Oil supplied station. In any major Canadian city, that confirmation is almost always yes. The website toptiergas.com lists certified locations. Use it before you default to habit. The one rule that saves your engine. Here is the rule that repair technicians and automotive engineers use, and I want you to remember this one line. Check the certification, check the injection system. If your vehicle was built after 2012 and uses gasoline direct injection, known as GDI, which you can confirm in your owner's manual under engine specifications, you need top-tier certified fuel every single time you fill up, not occasionally. Not when the premium pump is convenient, every time. The top-tier website is toptiergas.com. It takes 45 seconds to search your postal code and find every certified location near you. 45 seconds versus between $800 and $1,200 for a walnut blasting service. I have done harder math than that. Here is what that service actually involves, because I think if more Canadians understood it, they would never pull into an unbranded independent again. Walnut blasting is a process where a technician removes your intake manifold, inserts a small tube into each intake port, and blasts crushed walnut shells at your intake valves under compressed air to physically knock the carbon deposits off. The manifold comes off. Every valve gets blasted individually. The carbon comes out in chunks. Your technician will show you a before and after photo if you ask, and you will never look at cheap fuel the same way again. A properly maintained engine running top-tier fuel from day one can go the entire life of the vehicle without requiring that service. An engine that has been fed minimum standard fuel for 5 years needs it by 60,000 kilometers. That service, at Canadian labor rates in 2024, runs between $800 in a smaller market and $1,200 at a dealership in Toronto or Vancouver. The price premium for top-tier fuel over non-certified fuel is typically 2 to 4 cents per liter. On a 60-liter fill-up, that is between $1.20 and $2.40 extra per tank. Fill up once a week for 5 years, and you have spent somewhere between $312 and $624 in fuel quality premium. That is against a $1,200 cleaning service that you now do not need. Spending $400 more on better fuel over 5 years to avoid a $1,200 repair is not a close call. It is barely a math problem. The deposit math nobody does. Let me take this further because I think the true cost of cheap fuel in Canada is something the industry has successfully hidden behind the complexity of engine chemistry. Most Canadians think about fuel cost in cents per liter. That is exactly the frame the cheap stations want you stuck in. 3 cents cheaper per liter sounds like a win at the pump. It is a loss in the driveway. Here is what the full ledger looks like. A GDI engine running non-top tier fuel from New Will typically show measurable intake valve deposits by 40,000 kilometers. By 60,000 kilometers, those deposits are large enough to cause combustion inefficiency, meaning your engine is burning more fuel to produce the same output. Industry estimates put that inefficiency at between 3 and 6% of fuel economy once deposits are significant. On a vehicle averaging 12 liters per 100 kilometers and driving 25,000 kilometers per year, a 5% fuel economy loss costs you roughly $220 per year in additional fuel. Every year, quietly. While you congratulate yourself on saving 3 cents a liter, add the walnut blasting service at 60,000 kilometers. Add the reduced engine longevity from sustained carbon exposure around the valve seats. Add the turbocharger wear if your engine is also turbocharged, which it probably is if it was built after 2018. The cheap fuel station that saved you 3 cents a liter just cost you somewhere north of $3,000 over a decade, and not $1 of that shows up on a single receipt you can point to. This is how the minimum standard fuel industry survives. The cost is real, but it is distributed. It is invisible at the pump, and it shows up years later as a repair bill that your mechanic attributes to wear, mileage, and bad luck. It is none of those things. It is a direct consequence of a decade of filling up at the wrong places. Your engine is a precision machine. The tolerances inside a modern GDI engine are measured in microns. The people who engineered it specified top-tier fuel because they tested what happens without it, and they documented the results. Those results are sitting in an internal engineering file that you will never see behind a corporate firewall at a manufacturer who is quietly hoping you keep buying cheap fuel so that your engine needs service on their schedule, not yours. Do not let the fuel industry and the service industry work together against you. They are not conspiring, not exactly, but their incentives point in the same direction and your engine is in the middle. The bottom line, Canadian fuel standards set a floor, not a ceiling. Everything between that floor and the top-tier certification mark is legal, sellable, and quietly destructive in a modern engine. 11 stations in this video are operating at or near that floor. 5 are operating above it. Check toptiergas.com before you default to the station closest to your house. Understand what injection system is under your hood. And stop making fuel decisions based on cents per liter when the real cost is measured in thousands of dollars and years of engine life. The pump does not warn you, the brand sign does not protect you, and the mechanic who eventually hands you the repair bill will call it normal wear. It is not normal, it is preventable. If this video saved your engine, subscribe, because next week we are going inside Canadian home electrical panels. There is a breaker brand installed in millions of Canadian homes right now that has been linked to house fires across the country. The manufacturer knew, the builders kept installing it, and your insurance company is not going to cover what happens when it fails. You're going to want to see that one. I'm Alexander. This is Broken Canada, and we are just getting started.